Okay. It really doesn't matter what kind of debate you do. All of debate comes down to the same basic essentials. Almost all debates are about cause and effect relationships. So this thing causes this thing would result in this is more or less likely, blah, 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 blah. And it's about evaluating the costs and benefits of particular actions or ideas. So, cost benefit analysis comes from different theories. There's the philosophical theory of utilitarianism. You can look that up on your own. It's not really necessary. The idea is basically just that we should determine the best good or the best action by figuring out what the greatest good is for the greatest number of people. So cost-benefit analysis is from an economic term that's the same principle. It's like we should look at investments and figure out which one will give us the best economic return, and we should do that one. So in this, you might think about it like a scale. So like the side that has the most benefits will win the debate. All debates are about kind of two kinds of arguments. There are offensive arguments and defensive arguments. And you need both in order to win a debate. I think about this a lot like sports. So in sports, you need an offense that scores points for your side, whether it's, and there's many sports that have an offensive component to it, whether it's football or soccer or lacrosse or baseball or, it doesn't really matter. But my point is, they all have an offensive component. How are we going to move whatever the ball is to the net or to score a point in the goal? In the case of debate, an offensive argument is a reason why your side is good or your opponent's side is bad. So it's a benefit to voting for your side. Because remember, almost all debate topics are like proposition. They're like this thing or that thing. So they're like, is targeted killing moral or immoral? So if we say targeted killing is immoral, here's why that's bad. So targeted killing is the using like a drone or a military weapon to kill a terrorist in a foreign country. But we do cost-benefit analysis for a lot of things. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. The second kind of debate argument is a defensive argument. So that is essentially just pointing out a flaw or something that is wrong in your opponent's argument, but it might not necessarily be a reason that their position itself is bad. It's just like a reason that their argumentation or their reasoning is incorrect and should not be evaluated. Now, I think about almost all debates like this scale metaphor. So it's like whichever side can have more offensive arguments, sort of arguments in the favor of their side, will often win the debate. So if you think about it, let's use like a concrete example. So at school, they might have a debate amongst the administration about school lunch. And they might say, well, if we have a school lunch of this quality, more students will eat it. And it's good because we want students to stay at school. It shows that they're more prepared for class and they're like better engaged, and it also would reduce accidents because there wouldn't be so many students leaving. But somebody refuting that might be, well, that's bad because if we spend that extra money on that school lunch, then that means that we're going to have to cut this other school program that we also think is really important. So in that case, the benefits to improving school lunch might be improving student satisfaction and, reducing accidents. And the, harms to that or the danger, so in the cost-benefit example, the cost to that might be losing some other programs at school. And so in that debate, you would want to talk about and try to maximize the reason why your offensive arguments, whether you're defending that we should change school lunches and, get students to stay at school, talk about why that's really important and why that's more important than the costs or more important than that particular program, or why that program isn't particularly important or it wouldn't be cut. So you want to have a mix of offense and defense to try to get the scale in a debate to tip to your side, to make your offensive arguments, the benefits to your side more important than the cost to your side. You want to try to use your defensive arguments to challenge what your opponent says in order to mitigate those things. And so this really gets to kind of the two basics of all debate. And this occurs in, debate from, academic spheres to high school debates to, debates in the legal system is where this tradition actually comes from. And so it's the burdens in a debate. So the first burden is the burden of proof. And so if you're going to introduce an offensive argument in a debate, so you're going to have a reason why your side is good, or a reason why the opposition's side or stated position is bad. So, an offensive argument to believe for you. Then the burden of proof means that you have to present a complete argument. So that means an argument that has all of the parts of an argument that we discussed earlier in the video series. So that means you have to have a clear claim. You have to have compelling reasons to believe that claim. You have to have compelling reasons to believe that evidence that you've provided supports the conclusion that you want them to. And you have to have strong reasons why that concern or objection, that reason your side is good or reason that they are bad, is significant enough that the judge ought to take it into consideration to vote against the other side in the context of a debate. And so your burden is to present all of those things, because without that, you don't have a complete argument and you haven't made a complete case for change. You have not demonstrated that this should happen. This comes from the legal tradition of like the idea of, in a murder case, you have to prove beyond the shadow of a doubt that someone committed murder. So if you haven't met that burden, the jury can't find that person guilty of a crime. So it's the same idea in a debate, that you have to meet a burden of presenting a clear and convincing argument before the judge in the debate should say, okay, I'm compelled enough to vote on this. They should start with a level of skepticism. And so that's the last point here, is the burden of rejoinder. And so that is when someone has presented an offensive argument against you and has attempted to meet the burden of proof. It's your job to respond to that argument. This is what's called clash in a debate. And essentially, that's just like you need to pick places where they're wrong, or you think their logic is incorrect, or their evidence is not compelling, or their conclusion is not warranted. And you need to make arguments to attack that point. You need to it's your burden to clash with or refute those arguments. And then this is how debates happen. And it doesn't really matter what format that is, whether it's a policy debate, a public forum debate, a Lincoln Douglas debate, which are the kinds of debate that we do at Kent, but it could also be a debate in the classroom, a debate amongst your friends, or whatever. Like if somebody that you are talking to is making a case and they are presenting an argument that they're like, these three things are the reasons why you can't go out after 9 o'clock. Well, you're going to have to refute some part of that logic so that they no longer have an argument that makes sense, so it can't count for their side. And so I say this is like the essentials of debate because, it might look a little bit different in many different debate formats or different contexts, but every debate really comes down to the same things, which is maximizing the offensive reason that your side is correct. So why is your view correct and why is it important? And minimizing reasons why your side might, be incorrect, or the dangers of your side, or the problems with your side, so that those aren't compelling to a judge. And the more effectively you can do that, the more effectively you'll win debates.